A J Mix exclusive.
Hello, all. It's J-Mix here with part 2 of my exclusive interview with Mr. Phil Brewster. Phil Brewster is a former death row engineer who worked with the likes of Nate Dogg, Tupac Shakur, and Danny Boy. In this segment of the interview, we speak on a run-in with Suge Knight, the gang situation at Death Row Records, and musical engineering as a career. And if anyone out there wants a death row engineer on their production, hit up Phil Brewster at BigPhil771 at MSN.com. Serious inquiries only. And without any further ado, I'm going to get into part 2 of my exclusive interview with Mr. Phil Brewster. Phil, you were talking about the people that Suge called bodyguards. Were these people gang members?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, that's who he surrounded himself with, because that's who he's affiliated with. I think it was like the Pyru Bloods was with the signs that they were throwing up.
I know your time at Death Row was brief, but did you see Tupac align himself with that gang?
He was, I mean, Pac was one of those people who were like polar, where it seemed like he was too good for that shit, but he got caught up in it. So he didn't really, I didn't see him ever. I mean, I never hung out with Pac socially, so I have no idea. But I mean, when it came to there, he was friends with pretty much everybody. So there wasn't any problems, as far as like Bloods and Crips, and overall there wasn't. I mean, I think there was problems with like when OFTB would come in and there would be like some of Snoop's guys, because I mean OFTB were Bloods, all Snoop guys were Crips, but nothing big ever came out. Like I don't remember any, maybe like one fight or two, but for the most part, that was like squashed. And I remember, a meeting going like, dude, we're here to fucking make green. That's the common color, when it comes to here. So I don't give a fuck if you're Blood or Crip, we all get along. But Pac never really followed into that. I remember he just got caught up in the crazy excess lifestyle that place was, which I have to say I think it was the best era ever in hip hop, and I hear shit now that I'm just like, are you fucking serious? Like Drake and Kanye, I'm like, that's what's popular? I'm like, that's total shit. I feel really fortunate to actually be a part of what I think that's probably the golden era of hip hop. I mean, I don't think anything has ever been that good before or since, and I don't think it's just because I was there. I mean, even for the Chronic album, I remember that was before I was working there, and just it was run kind of like a gang. I mean, there was an essence of the East Coast, West Coast, which I've heard a bunch of stuff, saying, oh, there really wasn't anything. And I'm like, bullshit, that was for real. I mean, there was fights. I mean, I remember Big Syke freaking punching somebody in the back of the head, and it was like an East Coast, West Coast shit. That somebody dissed them or whatever for being West Coast, and they got in a fight, and he punched him in the head, and it just turned to mist.
Phil, did you ever hear of a Lakewood Mall incident? It's where Trevon Lane allegedly had a death row chain stolen?
No, that was after me. I had left probably like 3 months before Pac was killed. So I wasn't, I was friends with everybody still, but I was working as an engineer in a totally different field because things were getting pretty crazy towards the end. So I got a call one day of like, so are you happy where you're at? And I'm like, fuck no. Do you want a job? Fuck yeah. Can you start Monday? I'm like, hell yeah. And that was it.
You went to work with Les Claypool, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I worked for Les Claypool. I think I like my first stint there was like 7 years, and I left for 6, and then I came back and worked for like another 6 years, basically doing video games and anime.
And you also did work on Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, I worked on Ghost in the Shell and Ninja Scroll, and Akira was probably the best known one almost ever. So I've been blessed in a sense that I got to work like the golden age of hip hop, the golden age of anime. I'm not a big fan of anime, but you know, all the ones that I worked on that was seemed to be the ones that became classics.
You worked on Resident Evil 5. Is it surreal knowing how popular that project was?
It's so weird. Like I don't know, maybe I'm jaded because I've been working in it so long. You you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's just a job. And I mean, there's some of them like when I did Gears of War, Gears of War 3, Judgment Day, I think it was the last one that came out. I was like, wow, this is cool to be on such a big. I mean, that's a big franchise right there. So I mean, yeah, you definitely go, wow, this is pretty big deal. It's going to look really good on the resume, and it paid pretty good too.
Phil, do you feel that being a true audio engineer is a dying career?
Yeah, I mean, being an all-around complete engineer is something they just don't teach at all in any of the schools. I mean, I have friends that are old school engineers like myself that teach now, and there's a lot of basic stuff that like they just don't teach because they don't have time, and they have like a 10-week course, and they have to pretty much go off and teach everything you need to know about audio, and there's so much to know that are even like fundamentals, but that may not apply anymore because you have software that you know will fix the problems. So I mean, in this business, it's like you constantly have to evolve. I mean, you I've pretty much done everything you could possibly do in sound, just to stay relevant and provide for my family. So I mean, it's not ideal. I love mixing and I love music. That's where my passion is. But especially when it comes to music, it's really hard to make a living off of that. I mean, I've got a good friend that worked at Death Row. He did beats for him. He's done countless things after that, big albums like Korn and Edema and Kiss and all that type of stuff. And he's struggling to find work that people with a budget that will actually go into a professional studio. It's become very rare because I mean, even I have a studio at my house that I could do full on albums and have. So the days of going to Can-Am and working on an SSL, it's really rare because the money is not there. People are not making money off of albums anymore. So there's no money to, it's all trickle down things. So, it's you evolve, and there's people who are just basically, they only know like a home studio environment type thing because that's on what it's really come down to.
Do you feel with the rise of the home studios and the loop beats that's taken a part of the soul of music in general?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would have to say it's taken away a lot of the spontaneity because you've got unlimited amounts of takes that you can do and you get to keep them and you never have to make a decision. You could just keep on doing it and we'd be maxed out at, 48 tracks. I mean, when we were at Can-Am, it was 48 tracks. We, in both rooms, we had two 24-act. So actually, you would only have 46 tracks because 2 tracks would be taken up with SEMPTY, with time code to lock the 2 machines up. So 46 tracks is what you had. And you can only do so many passes before it starts degrading. So, those are things that you're aware of. So you don't just keep on doing it until you get it right. Well, you do it until you get it right, but you made a decision right then and there. Where now it's like, oh, we'll cut it together later, which is the way it is now. So I think being a musician, now it's like, oh, okay, you played that part good. We'll just copy paste it, or we'll loop it. Back then, it's like, no, you played it from beginning to end. If you did a chorus, you sang it beginning to end. You did all the choruses, especially when it came to the analog machines.
So people like Nate Dogg, who you worked with, would have to re-sing the whole track in some instances?
Yeah. There's no there's no auto-tune. That was way before auto-tune, so he'd nail it. I mean, he had his own style and it was a little flat, but that was his style. And I mean, I think I miss it. I miss having it in the songs. He was almost like an instrument himself on how he did his singing. It was different than being like a lead vocalist. I felt. I mean, I worked on his album also, and I didn't think as a lead, it wasn't as good as he was a background vocalist. I don't know. Only because he seemed more like an instrument to me.
All right, Phil, you got to tell us the hot sauce story.
All right. It was funny. I got called into his office. It was both me and my friend James Flores, which he's got tons of stories. He was there before me and after me. He was a runner for most of the time, but he was an assistant engineer, ended up getting an engineering there too. But he would do some of the dumbest shit. And this time, both of us were called in because we were the only ones who were allowed in his office. And we were in there with him and Kevin Lewis and Suge. Now, we knew that Kevin Lewis used to eat his lunch. He'd go off and take his food in there and put his feet up on the desk, pretend like he was top dog and shit like that.
Wait, he was sitting at Suge's desk?
Yeah, he would sit in his seat in the office and he'd put his feet up, and there was like tons of shit like that he would do. And he's like looking at us. Suge's yelling at me, going, why you steal my hot sauce? He just figured I stole his hot sauce, and I'm like, I don't even like hot sauce. And he's like, motherfucker, I didn't ask you if you like hot sauce. Why'd you steal my hot sauce? And I'm like looking at Kevin Lewis, and he's looking at me like he knows he was the one who's responsible. He's not sticking up and saying, oh, it was me, sorry, I'll put it back. It's in the other fridge. And he got right up in my face, man, and I could have pissed myself. He did the same thing to me and James at the same time. Got in both of our faces and we're like, dude, we don't even like hot sauce. Motherfucker, I didn't ask you if you like hot sauce. Why you steal my hot sauce? And we were just like, oh, dude, all over hot sauce. So we went out and bought him some hot sauce, man. It was Red Rooster. Don't fuck with his Red Rooster.
Once again, it's J-Mix here, and I want to thank all my YouTube subs and viewers, all the forum members, and everybody out there on the internet watching. I got more names to come, and more with Phil Brewster, so keep it locked right here and I'll catch everybody on the next upload. One love, everybody.
A J-Mix exclusive.
What up, shut up?